Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our live talk with STEM Ambassador Jen, who is the Education Manager at the Manta Trust. In celebration of Green Careers Week, Jen will guide you through the ocean's mysteries, sharing incredible marine creatures and thrilling discoveries from the past decade. You'll also learn about the exciting job of marine scientists and what makes it so fascinating. Please feel free to ask any questions by popping them into the chat, and Jen will answer as many as she can at the end of her talk. So I'm sure you're all waiting to hear from Jen, so let's get started. Good afternoon, Jen.
Good afternoon, Lisa, and good afternoon to all of you joining us. Thank you so much for coming along today. It's great to have so many of you joining us, particularly here in the UK, but also those of you joining us from other places around the world too. As Lisa kindly said, my name is Jen, and I work for an organisation called the Manta Trust. I'm a marine biologist and I'm a teacher, and our job at the Manta Trust is to try and protect a very, very important animal. Maybe you've heard of it before. It's called a manta ray. If there's anyone listening that hasn't heard of a manta ray before, do not worry. You definitely will have heard all about them by the end of our talk today. So our talk is called Secrets of the Ocean. And again, I hope there's some of you kind of sat there waiting, thinking, yes, I love the ocean. I love learning about the animals that live in the ocean. And today, hopefully, we'll find out a few things that maybe you didn't know before. So with that, we are going to start with a quiz to find out what we do and don't know already. Okay, your first quiz question is coming up. Here it is. How many new species or new types, how many new types of animals and plants do scientists discover every year? You might decide that maybe it's 5, maybe B, maybe they discover 100 new types of animals and plants every year. Maybe you think it's 1,000, or maybe you think 2,000 different types of animals and plants each year. We're going to have a vote in our own classrooms. If you think the answer is A, 5, go ahead and put up your hand so your teachers can see. Okay. If you think they discover 100 new types of animals and plants every year, B, put up your hands. Or maybe you're thinking 1,000, C, put up your hands. Or if you think they're discovering 2,000 new types of animals and plants every year, go ahead and put up your hand, and your teachers can see what you think. Well, were you correct? The answer is D, 2,000. Scientists are discovering around about 2,000 new types of animals and plants in the ocean every single year. We actually think we've only discovered the tiniest amount of animals and plants that are living in the ocean. Now, on the screen you're looking at, you can probably see a very, very cute cartoon of a pink octopus. This is a really lovely type of octopus. It's called a Dumbo octopus. And scientists are discovering new types of Dumbo octopus regularly, all the time. If I go on to the next slide, here is a new species that was discovered just last year. This is called a Hannan's pygmy squid. Hannan's pygmy squid. And this squid is tiny. It's about 1 centimetre. If you think about your rulers that you use at school, this tiny, tiny species of squid. So there's loads of new animals and plants in the ocean to find out about. We've only found a fraction of them to date. Let's try quiz question number 2. How much of the ocean has been explored? You might decide that it's less than half, or you might decide that it's more than half. How much of the ocean has been explored? Let's do our vote again. If you think we've explored less than half of the ocean, hands up. Okay. Or if you think we've explored more than half of the ocean, hands up. Okay. Well, your correct answer this time is less than half. We've explored far less than half of the ocean. In actual fact, we've only explored about 20% of the ocean. There's about 80% that we haven't been able to explore at all. Why is that? Well, a lot of it is just too deep. It's really, really deep, and at those depths, the pressure is really, really great. It makes it really hard for scientists to get to that area and get to that environment. In fact, it's easier to go to space than it is to go to the depths of the ocean. So there is an awful lot still to discover there. Shall we try quiz question 3? The ocean has more volcanoes than on land. There are more volcanoes underwater in the ocean than on land. True or false? Okay. If you think true, the ocean does have more volcanoes than land, raise your hand. Or if you think it's false, put up your hand. Okay, what is your answer this time? It is true. There are far more volcanoes in the ocean than on land. We think there's somewhere in the region of about 1,500 volcanoes on Earth. And the majority of them, by quite a long way, are underwater in the ocean. Something like 75% of all volcanic activity is happening in the ocean. Now, I thought you might like to see what that could look like. So here is a picture. This is a volcano called Kavachi volcano. And it's been a really, really active volcano. It's erupted a lot. It's had a lot of rumblings over the years, found in the middle of the ocean. Quite shallow depths just under the ocean. And this is a really, really difficult place for scientists to go and explore. It's really dangerous. If the volcano is exploding so often, it's a really difficult environment to go to. So we don't know that much about it, but back in 2015, scientists were able to go. There was a quiet period and scientists were able to go and find out more about this volcano. They took videos and they took images, and what they found was really incredible. They found there was lots of different types of animals living in and around the volcano. Lots of fish living in this volcanic crater, including 2 species of shark, a silky shark and a hammerhead shark, living within this volcano. Pretty amazing when you think that actually the temperature here is much higher. There's lots of dangerous gases in this environment. It's not an easy place to live at all. Okay, let's try our next quiz question. We're going to go to the coral reef. Here's an image of a coral reef on the screen. Your question, coral reefs are made of rock. True or false? Hands up if you're going for true. They are made of rock. Okay. And hands up for those of you going false. Let's have a little look. So here is our beautiful coral reef. And you would be forgiven for saying true, they are made of rock, because they definitely look like rock, like this brightly coloured beautiful rock. But the answer was false. They are not rock. And in fact, corals are animals, just like the fish swimming around that coral reef are also animals. This coral is made up of lots and lots of tiny animals, microscopic animals called polyps. Okay, and they are alive, just like all the other animals around them are alive. Now, if we go take ourselves to the Great Barrier Reef off Australia, the biggest coral reef in the world, again, you would think, well, what is there left to discover? It's so big. Surely we know everything about it already. But we don't. There is still lots to discover with the coral there too. And again, just a few years ago, scientists were studying the Great Barrier Reef and they were doing something called mapping. They were building a picture of the reef on their computer. And they made this amazing discovery. They found at the very end of the Great Barrier Reef a huge, tall coral reef. This coral reef was ginormous. It was taller than any building here in the UK. If you've ever been to Blackpool, you've seen the Blackpool Tower, it was bigger than the Blackpool Tower. If you've been to London and you've seen all the skyscrapers like the Shard, it was bigger than any of those skyscrapers. And in fact, it's bigger than this building here. This picture is in New York City. We have the Empire State Building. It's really hard to picture just how big that building is, but take a good look at that picture. Maybe look right down at the bottom where all the smaller buildings are. Imagine where the road is underneath. And then just look up. Take in how big this building is. Well, this coral reef was even taller than this building, over 500 meters tall out in the ocean. And we only found that out 4 years ago. So still lots and lots to discover around our coral reefs too. Okay, your last quiz question. The longest mountain range in the world is underwater. True or false? If you're going to go true, hands up. The longest mountain range in the world is underwater. True. Okay. If you think no, false, hands up now. Did you get it correct? This one is true. The longest mountain range in the world is underwater. Now, what I hope you're starting to see is that the ocean is an incredible thing to find out more about. There's volcanoes, there's mountains, there's so many animals yet to be discovered and plants yet to be discovered. There's so much of the ocean that we have not been able to go to. What an incredible job it is to study the ocean and the animals that live within it. Now, my background is a marine biologist. My job is to study animals that live in the ocean. And the picture that you can see on the screen, this is a type of environment that I know best. Warm water, tropical water, coral reef type environments. We see a scientist here with a scuba equipment on. They're using that scuba equipment to help them breathe underwater. They're measuring the coral. This is a really common thing to do now because of climate change affecting our coral reefs. We like to keep an eye on them. But not every scientist spends all their time in the water. You could be a marine scientist and spend a lot of your time in a laboratory. You might be using microscopes like the person here, looking at your water samples or looking at tiny microscopic animals. You might not be in warm environments. You could be in temperate environments. Those of you sat here in the UK, we have plenty of marine wildlife around the UK for research. You might work in cold environments, polar environments like the Arctic. You know, there are all sorts of different jobs to do relating to the ocean. Now, as I said to you at the beginning, I work for an organisation called the Manta Trust. And at the Manta Trust, we are working to protect and find out more about a particular type of animal, the manta ray. And I imagine quite a lot of you have probably heard of a manta ray before, but if you haven't, we're going to find out a bit more about them together. Now, before I tell you more about the manta rays and the work that we do, I thought it'd be a really good idea for us all to be able to recognise one. So up on your screen, we have pictures of 4 different types of ray. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I just want to know which one of these is the manta ray. Can we have a vote again in our classrooms? Do you think number 1, this beautiful spotty ray, is the manta ray? Put up your hand. Okay. If you think it's number 2, also a spotty ray, put up your hand. Number 3, or lastly, number 4. So 4 types of ray, but only 1 is a manta ray. Which one? Number 3. Number 3 is our beautiful manta ray. All of these are rays, and all rays are fish. They don't really look like a typical fish. They look quite unusual because they're flat, but they are all fish. And the best way to imagine them, well, rays, like the manta ray, they are very, very closely related to sharks. They're like the cousin of the shark. I almost think of these rays as like a shark which has been squished flat. Okay, and it's quite hard to see in the photos, but the manta ray is much bigger than all the other rays that you see in the photo. It's not the biggest fish in the world. The biggest fish in the world is the whale shark, but the manta ray is really big. Really, really big. Not quite as big as that whale shark, but really big. We're going to measure them out a little bit later. It's a really big fish. It's like a gentle giant. They can't harm you in any way. They don't have that stinger on their tail like some stingrays will have. Okay. I thought you might like to see what they're like under the water. So I'm going to play you a short video so you can watch them and you can get to know them a little bit better. Let's have a watch together. Okay, so there's probably quite a few things you noticed in that video. You might have noticed some of the manta rays had fish stuck onto their body. These are called remoras. We call them hitchhiker fish. They're just catching a lift to where they need to go. You might have noticed that sometimes the manta rays are on their own, but occasionally in that video we also saw big groups of manta rays coming together. Now, a lot of that video was filmed in a particular area, and so I'm showing you here a world map. Most of us today, not all of us, but most of us are in the orange circle. We're sat here in the UK. Now, if you want to study manta rays, we're going to need to go away from the UK. Our waters are too cold. They do not like the cold water. We do get some other types of ray here in the UK, but not a manta ray. And a lot of the video that we just watched was filmed in the red circle. There's a very, very beautiful country in this red circle in the middle of the Indian Ocean. Let me show you what it looks like. Here we are. This is a beautiful country called the Maldives. It's made up of lots and lots of islands surrounded by beautiful coral reefs, and we get a lot of marine animals here. Things like sharks, things like turtles and dolphins, and huge numbers of manta rays. This is where many of our scientists live and work. Now, what would you do if you're a scientist studying manta rays? Well, you could do all sorts of things. Let me introduce you to someone. The lady in the photo here is a marine biologist called Tam. Okay, Tam in this photo, she is in the waters of the Maldives. She's been out on her boat that morning and she spotted some manta rays in the water. And so she very quietly and slowly, not to scare them off, got into the water with the manta rays. She doesn't have any scuba equipment on. She's holding her breath because she's in quite shallow water. And in her hand, you can see she's holding an underwater camera. What's she doing? Well, she is taking photos of the bellies of the manta rays. And this is one job that we do whilst we're studying them. We always try to take a photo of their belly. That is because their bellies look like this. Okay, they are covered in spots. But no two manta rays have the same spot pattern. Just like you do not have the same fingerprints as anyone else sat around you in the room where you are. Okay, every manta ray looks different because of their spot patterns. Now, this is really, really helpful for us because it means we can identify them. We can give them a name and we can identify them by looking at their spots. So I thought maybe we could test your manta ray identification skills to see if you can tell them apart from one another too. So here in the picture is manta ray number 1. Take a really good look at manta ray's number 1 spots. We're going to try and match it up. Manta ray number 1 could be a manta ray called Hassan or a manta ray called Zulu. It could be Mike or it could be a manta ray called Levi. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to take a look at those 4 options and decide which manta ray is manta ray number 1. Okay, maybe you're starting to come to a decision. Just another 10 seconds to make up your mind. Okay, and 3, 2, 1. Let's see if you're correct. If you said manta ray number 1 was called Mike, oh, I'm sorry, that's not quite right. If you said manta ray number 1 was called Levi, I'm afraid that's not right either. But if you said manta ray number 1 is called Zulu, you can give yourself a nice round of applause. Well done, manta ray number 1 is Zulu. Zulu is a male manta ray. He's a boy, and we've seen him quite a lot in the Maldives, in those islands I showed you before. Shall we try number 1? It's going to get a little bit harder. Here is manta ray number 2. Now, manta ray number 2 doesn't have as many spots. It makes it a little bit trickier. And I've given you 4 options that all look very similar. We've got Tevies, we've got Slow Coach, we've got Davy Jones, or we've got Ted the Toaster. 2 of these in particular look very, very similar. So look really carefully. I'll give you a little bit longer this time. Off you go. Okay, maybe you're starting to come to a decision. Let's say 10 seconds more to make up your mind. Okay. Now there are two manta rays here in particular that look very similar. Davy Jones and Ted the Toaster. It's one of those two, but which one? If you said manta ray number 2 is called Ted the Toaster, you can give yourselves a big round of applause. Well done, this is Ted the Toaster. She's a female, she's a girl manta ray, and you've probably noticed in the main picture, something has happened to Ted the Toaster. She's got a big bite out of her body. What could have bitten Ted the Toaster? Well, they are so big, not many animals would try to eat them, but killer whales would, and so would a couple of types of shark. And this is indeed a shark bite. Now, Ted the Toaster has been lucky. The shark has bitten her body, but manta rays are quite quick, and she has swam off as quick as she can, and she has gotten herself away. And something really incredible about manta rays, they have the most amazing ability to heal up their wound. And so she will heal this shark bite up completely. You would barely know it had happened to her a little while down the line. Okay, last manta ray to identify. Manta ray number 3. I think this is the hardest one of all. It could be Roadrunner, it could be Baba Ganoush, it could be Stinger, or it could be Tinkerbell. Again, take 30 seconds to have a really good look. Again, perhaps you're starting to make up your mind. 10 more seconds. Okay, let's come back together. So we had 4 options. They all look very similar this time, but this manta ray is called Baba Ganoush. Well done if you correctly identified Baba Ganoush. Now, Baba Ganoush is my favorite of all the manta rays. I call him the miracle manta. Perhaps again, you've noticed in that main picture, he looks a little bit unusual. Have a look at the bottom of his body. He's got no tail. He also looks a little bit damaged at the bottom. He has had a couple of problems in his life. He was bitten by a shark, just like Ted the Toaster. He healed up his shark bite. But then he had problem number 2. Poor Baba Ganoush was hit by a speedboat. Now, if you imagine a speedboat, at the back of the boat, they've got an engine, they've got this propeller like a fan, which is spinning around, and that hit him and it cut up his body. He had really, really bad wounds all up his body. And when we first saw him after he was hit by the boat, we thought, poor Baba Ganoush, there is no way he will survive. But then 6 months later, the scientists were in the water and they took this picture that you see here. And you can see he has survived and he has healed up those wounds really well because of that amazing power they have to heal their body. He hasn't got his tail, but he is doing pretty well without it. So that is Baba Ganoush, or miracle manta. So the manta rays we've been looking at, these ones around the Maldives, they're a particular type of manta, a particular species. It's called a reef manta ray. This is what they look like. But there is another type of manta. It's called an oceanic manta ray. You might be able to see it looks a bit different. The white patches on the top of its body are not the same. The spots on the body of the oceanic manta are only near the tail. But the biggest difference between the two is that the oceanic manta is much, much larger. Later on, when you have a little bit more time, you might like to measure out the oceanic manta to figure out how big it is. It would take about 5 children lined up across the room with their arms outstretched, fingertip to fingertip, to be as big as one of these manta rays. They are really, really large. But like I said to you earlier, one of the best things about working as a marine biologist is we are finding out new things all the time. And a recent discovery, well, we think there aren't just 2 types of manta rays, we think there are 3. And here is the 3rd extra new species that has just been discovered. It's called an Atlantic manta ray, and it looks a bit like a mixture between the other two, and it shows some other differences, like where it lives and how it behaves as well. So really exciting. You would think with such a large animal, surely we know everything there is to know about them. Actually, there is loads to still find out. Things we don't know. Well, for instance, we have never seen one give birth in the wild. We've only seen them give birth in an aquarium. We don't know where they go to have their babies. We don't even really know exactly how long they live. We think maybe 50 to 60 years. We've not really been studying them for long enough to know for sure. And they also do an amazing behavior called breaching, where they jump out the water. I'm going to show you it in this video. Let's press play. So breaching behavior, where animals jump out of the water. Well, as you just saw manta rays do this. Why? We don't know. There's all sorts of guesses. Maybe it could be to communicate with one another. Say to the other mantas nearby, come on over, there's loads of food. Maybe it could be to get these annoying bugs called parasites, which are quite itchy and annoying, off their body. Or maybe it could just be for fun. You know, we don't know for sure. So if you wanted to study manta rays, well, there's all sorts of things still to find out about them in the future. Okay, we're going to go back to our quiz questions. One last quiz question, because it's not just manta rays that we're finding new things out about all the time. Here is your question. Which of these is a real scientific discovery? You might decide A, glow-in-the-dark sharks, or you might decide B, see-through octopus. Hands up if you're going to go for A, glow-in-the-dark sharks. Is that a real scientific discovery? Or do you think B, see-through octopus, is a real discovery? Put up your hand now. Okay, well, I've been a bit mean because it was a trick question, and really these are both real scientific discoveries. They sound, you know, like something you would dream up, but these are both real things. Shall we have a look? Here is our glow-in-the-dark shark. So there are lots of types of sharks which glow. They use something called bioluminescence to make themselves glow in the dark. But just very recently, over the last few years, scientists have discovered 3 types of sharks living in the very deep sea, which also do this. And again, we don't really know how they do it, and we don't really know why they do it. Maybe it's to help them find food. Maybe it helps them with camouflage in the kind of blue, glowy environment where they live. You know, we just don't know for sure. And here is the see-through octopus. We call it a glass octopus. Again, it's a pretty amazing animal. It's almost entirely transparent. You can just see the eyes and a bit of the nervous system, a bit of the digestive system, but really entirely see-through. This animal, again, lives in the deep sea, meaning that we really don't come across it very often. We really don't know much. And just again, in very recent years, scientists managed to get some video footage of this animal. And I thought, again, you may like to see it. Let's have a watch of this see-through octopus. Oh. Now you can get a really good look at it here, and you can see just how transparent it is. And it is not the only transparent animal that you'll find in the ocean. Quite a number of animals use this tactic of being transparent or see-through. It's a great adaptation. One of the thoughts is that maybe it helps them to sneak up on their prey. They can go around pretty much undetected. But again, a really amazing new discovery. So as we come towards the end, what I really hope today is that you think, wow, isn't the ocean an incredible place? Isn't there so much to still find out about? Maybe one day you might like to be that person finding out more out about the ocean. So I'm going to give you one last question to take away today. Maybe you want to think about it after the session, or maybe when you go home later on this afternoon. Your question, what ocean animal would you like to find out more about? Maybe it's one of the ones we've talked about today, the manta ray. maybe those glow-in-the-dark sharks and the transparent octopus. Or maybe you already had a favourite ocean animal and you think, I would like to find out more about that. And who knows, maybe one day you would be a marine biologist studying these animals for your job. But otherwise, I'm now going to hand it over to you. I'm sure there's some of you sat there thinking, oh, I really have this question I'd like to ask. And now is your time. Feel free to put any questions in the chat and we're going to try and get through as many as we can.
We certainly are. Thank you very much, Jen. That was so informative and I am sure everybody enjoyed your talk. And we've got some great questions coming in. So I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, James, and he'll present those to you. Hi, James.
Hi. Hi, Jen. So first of all, we've got a big shout out to do to all pupils from years 1 to 6 at Long Close School. And they said they've been looking forward to your workshop today and they love the ocean.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
And then one more school shout before we get to the first question is we've got a hello from a Stevie Wonder class at Polebrook Primary School as well.
Wow, well done. Thank you for joining us as well. It's great to have you.
So the first question we've got is saying, is all manta rays the same colour, size?
That's a great question. So they're not all the same size. So if I go back a little bit and we can look at them together, here are the 3 species. For so long we said 2 species, but here are the 3 species. The reef manta ray is the one we looked at the most today, that one on the left, and it is the smaller of the 3. It's still really big. It gets to be about 4 meters from one wing, we would call it, one side to the other wing. So, you know, you could measure that out later by having a few people kind of spread out across the room. You'll see they really are quite big. The oceanic manta in the middle, that is our biggest species. So that is the one that I said would take about 5 children usually with our arms outstretched to be the same size as one of those manta rays. They're about 7 meters from one end to the other. You know, they really are quite large. And in terms of colour, well, I haven't got many pictures to show you the colour here today, but on the screen at the moment, this is kind of the standard coloration. They are normally this dark kind of black colour with the white patches. But sometimes we do see mantas that are almost entirely white, and we do see some that are almost entirely black. And there is one very, very special manta that has been spotted just off Australia. He's called Inspector Clouseau. You can look him up after, and he is pink. And I promise it's not a joke, it's not April Fool's Day. He is a real life pink manta. Maybe go and have a little look at him after the session. He's very cool.
Thank you, Jen. The next question is, how do the scientists get so close to the rays?
How do they get so close to the rays? That's a great question. It does take quite a lot of skill because manta rays are quite quick. And if they don't want you near them, they will swim off very, very quickly. So we do have to go in, you know, quite quietly and slowly. And we're very careful in the way that we approach them. We always approach them from the side because just like you wouldn't like anyone sneaking up on you from behind, a manta ray doesn't want to be snuck up on from behind either. So we kind of let them know that we're coming and we go in quite slowly and carefully. Like I said, they didn't want us there. They do swim off quite quickly. They make that well known. And because these are manta rays rather than a stingray, we don't need to worry about anything like a stinger or being harmed in that way. They are really quite gentle giants. So we can get quite close to them in that way. Now, we only really do that if we are trying to do some research. If we are trying to find out things about them, we get special permission to be able to go close to them. But normally, if you were swimming, you would try and give them a bit of space. Just like you don't want anyone kind of really close to you all the time. You know, they don't enjoy that either.
Thank you, Jen. And the next question was from class 9, and they've asked, do manta rays bite?
It's a good question. Do manta rays bite? No, you wouldn't get bitten by a manta ray. So they don't really have teeth as we kind of think about teeth, not teeth like ours anyway. And inside, I wonder if I've got any pictures. Let me have a little look. Can we see inside their mouth at any point? Maybe not. Don't know if I've got any nice mouth pictures. Inside their mouths, oh, maybe at the end. No, not even here. What they have is kind of like a filtration system, a bit like a sieve that you would use in the kitchen to get maybe water out of your vegetables or water out your pasta. Manta rays are doing that inside their mouths. They're straining these tiny, tiny animals called plankton out of the water. And that is what they eat. And so to do that, they don't need proper teeth like we have, or if you imagine a big animal like a tiger with these big teeth, they don't have anything like that. But they do have, along the very bottom of their mouth, almost like the teeniest, tiniest teeth you could imagine. They don't look like teeth like we know them. And they just help them kind of hold on during things like mating, when they're trying to have babies. It helps them to do that. So no proper teeth, you wouldn't get bitten by one.
Thank you, Jen. And the next question is from Kingfisher class, asking, how much do they weigh? How are they hard to find, and how do they heal themselves?
Oh, how much do they weigh? Well, it depends on which species, which one we're talking about, because they are all quite different. They weigh a lot. What you can do if you want to as a class afterwards, you can go onto the Manta Trust website, and on there you can look at all the different types, and it tells you things like their weight on there, and you can have a really good look at each one. And oh, sorry, James, what was the second part of that question? How much do they weigh, and
are they hard to find?
Are they hard to find? They can be. Now, it depends where in the world you're looking for them. They're found in kind of warm tropical water all across the earth. So you're thinking like either side of the equator. And some areas are easier to come across than others. When we're on the boat looking for them, the way that we tend to find them is one of their wings, or one of their fins, these bits on the side, quite often just sticking up above the water. And I always say to people, it's a bit like they're waving hello at you, because this fin is just sticking out. Sometimes it looks a bit like a shark fin, and that is usually how we spot them.
And the last bit to the question was, how do they heal themselves?
Do you know what? We don't really fully understand how they do it. That's a great question. It's a very, very complicated process, but it's great for us to try to understand that better, because with animals like manta rays that can do things better than we can, like heal themselves, we think that by studying those things, maybe we can find out how do they do it, and can we use that in human healthcare? Can we use that to help heal our wounds? So it's really good to study animals and learn how we can use that for ourselves too, but we don't fully understand it yet.
Thank you, Jen. The next question is something for the actual Manta Trust. So do people with Manta Trust save manta rays when they're injured?
Yeah, great question. So we do occasionally, when we're out in the water, come across a manta ray that is maybe tangled up in fishing net, or has gotten tangled up in some other type of thing. And if that happens, and we will try to rescue it. Yeah, we will try to. We usually have like a dive knife on us. Most divers will carry a dive knife in case they do need to free anything, and we will try and cut it off if we can. Again, it can be quite tricky because it's a big animal, it's moving. It might try and swim off. It might be quite worried and stressed and moving a lot. What's really nice about manta rays is there are quite a few stories from people I've worked with who say they act almost like a mammal, like a dolphin or a whale. You hear stories about these animals when they're hurt, they come over to humans for help. Well, actually, we've got a few stories now about manta rays doing something similar, hovering around humans, looking like they want our help, then hovering around them afterwards, almost like, you know, they're staying close by whilst they kind of recover from that process. So another really interesting thing about them is they have the biggest brain to body size of any fish. So for a fish, we think they're really, really intelligent. And that would, again, just be more evidence of that, the fact that they're seeking out help, as it seems to be.
Thanks so much. The next question we've got is, how fast do the manta rays swim?
Again, that's a great question. And it's a really difficult one to answer because they have different speeds for if they're just resting, they don't sleep like we do, or if they're kind of just normal speed, or if they're going really quick. I haven't really spoken about it today as well, but there's also another type of ray called a devil ray that we also work with. And there's one particular type of devil ray which is really quick. There's a really, really nice video on YouTube. I can always link people to if they want to email into STEM Learning, they can get it to me, of these devil rays swimming really quickly after their food. So it depends a little bit on the species and it depends what they're doing, but they can be quite quick. Really easy answer. Quicker than you can keep up with them swimming. Let's put it that way.
Thank you, Jen. Bridport Primary have asked, how big is a baby manta?
Great question. So when a baby manta is born, and remember, we haven't seen them born in the wild, only in an aquarium, but when we did see them born in the aquarium, they come out quite funny from their mum because their wings, these fins on the side, they're all wrapped around their head like this. And we say they're a bit like a baby burrito. They're all wrapped up, and that's to help them come out when they're born. but already they're quite big when they're born. They're around about 5 to 6 foot, which is around about the height of, you know, a kind of average woman, average man. So if you look maybe at your teachers, they might help you, show you how big that is, but they're already really large.
Thank you. Year 2 at St Margaret's Primary School have asked, what are the parts at the top of the manta ray?
Oh, I think you probably mean these parts by the mouth. So right by the mouth, they've got these 2 fins, which are coming around in front of the mouth, and they've got a special name. They're called cephalic fins. They're a bit like a funnel, okay? So they're there in front of the mouth, and they're helping to funnel water full of plankton, which they eat, into the mouth. But the manta ray can also fold them up. They can kind of roll up and roll behind a little bit. We think there could be a role in communication, in helping them to maybe signal things to one another. Still a mystery, we don't know.
Thank you, Jen. And the next question is, what do manta rays eat?
So they eat the plankton that I just mentioned. Now, a plankton is teeny tiny animals in the water. You can, when you're in the water, you can tell if there's a lot of plankton. It gets very murky, and then you know, well, there's a good chance there could be mantas around. There's a lot of plankton, but it's really hard to see individual plankton with your eyes. You would normally put them under a microscope to look at them. So really teeny tiny animals.
Thank you, Jen. The next question is, what is the biggest manta ray in the world?
Well, I couldn't tell you the individual biggest, but again, going back to those pictures, that one in the middle, the oceanic manta ray, is the biggest one. But I don't know if anyone knows which is the biggest of all the oceanic mantas. We do have a bit of a way of measuring them. We use a special piece of equipment to help us measure them without having to get, again, too close. And you know, it's not quite like a tape measure. We can stay a little way away from them and use lasers to do it. But whether or not anyone knows which is the biggest one recorded, not sure.
Thank you, Jen. And the next one is, are you able to work out how many manta rays there are in the world?
Yeah, great question. So I'm going to take you back to this activity that you did. Now, we had a bit of fun and you were identifying these manta rays, but we do this pretty much every day as part of our job. Every time we get in the water, we take the photos, and then we go back to the computer and we look to recognize who we've seen. And I just gave you 4 options. It was all I could fit on the screen, but in reality, there's thousands of manta rays to try and match this to. And good news, this year, the computer is going to start doing this for us with AI, artificial intelligence, but we have been doing it just like you've been doing it by your eye. And we do this because we then keep them all on the computer with their name, and we can start to work out how many there are in the world. So we know now that there are several thousand in the Maldives. We've got, again, a different database on our computer for other areas of the world. So we know how many maybe are around Ecuador, how many are around Australia. And so we can start to build up this picture of how many manta rays are there in particular areas and how many are there in the world. Yeah.
Thank you, Jen. And the next question we got is from Neville's Cross Lego League Club, and they've asked, what's your most useful tools as a marine biologist?
Now I know Neville's Cross because I know you've emailed me in about your Lego, and I've just replied to you today. What are our most useful tools as a marine biologist? Well, for us, I mean, it depends what area of marine biology you're doing, but for us at the Manta Trust, we've got a few useful bits of equipment. I would say our underwater cameras, really, really important for the photos that we've talked about. We do have a kind of piece of equipment that's like an ultrasound device that we can take into the water, and we can scan female mantas with it to find out if they're pregnant. And that's really helpful for us because it helps us to work out, you know, how many babies are there likely to be in the future? Is the population, are the numbers going up or the numbers going down? There is a piece of equipment we use to help us measure them that I mentioned before. We have cameras that we leave on the coral reef. They're kind of like remote cameras that help to monitor the coral reef because we can't be there all the time. So it gives us more footage of what's going on. You know, there's all sorts of different bits of equipment that we use regularly.
The next question is from Lincoln Gardens Primary School, asking, how long have you been a marine biologist for, and how do you get into that field of work?
That's a great question. So I've been a marine biologist kind of on and off for, I don't know, maybe like 15 years, but I say on and off because I'm also a teacher. So I've done marine biology, then I've done lots of teaching about animals, and then I've done some more marine biology. I've kind of been back and forth quite a few times. I've worked with manta rays and the Manta Trust for about 2.5 years, but other marine animals before that. Well, I actually worked with UK marine animals quite a lot. Things like basking sharks. If you've ever seen a picture of a big basking shark with the huge mouths that open, they also eat plankton like the manta ray. And grey seals. We have the biggest number of grey seals in the world around the UK, and I used to work with them here as well. How do you get into it is a really good question. Now, maybe you're sat here, I don't know if you're at a primary school, let's say you're maybe at a primary school at the moment, and maybe you're starting to realise, I love learning about ocean animals, maybe I like swimming, I really like science. Okay, science is your #1 subject. When you go to secondary school, you're thinking, you know, probably I'm going to really enjoy biology. That would be a great subject to enjoy. Okay. After you finish with all your schooling, you might go on to university, and university is where you can pick a subject that you feel really strongly about. You might pick marine biology. Okay. When I went to university, I've been a couple of times, but the first time I studied something called zoology, which was studying animals in general, both land animals and marine animals. So you can start to narrow down what you want to do and what you want to learn about. And maybe also as you get a bit older, you might learn to scuba dive. You can do that from quite a young age, from about 11, I think, you can learn to scuba dive, which is where you use that equipment to breathe underwater. So that could be something to look into as well.
Thank you. And the last 2 questions, I know we've gone over, but we've got so many questions. What is your favourite thing about working for the Manta Trust?
I love so many things about working for the Manta Trust. No 2 days are the same for me. I do a lot of teaching about marine animals, but also just a couple of months ago, I was in the Maldives where we saw on the boat and in the water with manta rays. So I get lots of different things that I get to do in my job. A lot of the time I'm here in the UK, which is great for me now because I'm a bit older and I've got my own family and a child, so I need to be here now. But I also get to travel a lot too, and I get to spend time away from home and traveling, which is really exciting. So there's loads of exciting things about working for the Manta Trust or for other marine charities too.
Thank you. And the last question, what country is the manta most popular in?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, they're popular in lots of countries. I mentioned the Maldives today because that is where the Manta Trust kind of started. That's where our charity began. And the reef manta rays, the ones that we see in the picture, the smaller species, the biggest population of them in the world is in the Maldives. So if you were someone that's like, you know, oh, I just really want to go and see a manta ray, where am I going to go? There are lots of places, but the Maldives is really, really high on that list. But, you know, there are all sorts of countries that have manta rays and that really, really cherish their manta ray population. You know, it's really important for them as a country and really important to who they are to have these animals.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'll just hand it back to Lisa briefly.
Thank you, James. Oh, Jen, thank you so much. That's so inspiring. I think every single person that's listened to you today must want to go and see manta rays and maybe even become a marine scientist in the future. So thank you very much. And
You're
thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. It really is appreciated. And thank you to all the wonderful children and teachers that joined us today. And we look forward to seeing you all again in the future. So enjoy the rest of Green Careers Week and we'll see you soon. Goodbye, everyone.